I'm going to talk a little bit about how not to get arrested this morning, because I think that's everybody, to stay in this business, that's what you have to do. You have to pass a background check. So a little bit about your rights, and then we're going to talk into, so this is both on a criminal aspect, and then hopefully moving in towards a legal market, we need it in a compliance aspect, because that is going to be one of the most important things, not only for state protections, but also to make sure that we're insulated from the potential federal government and what's going to happen within change over the next couple months with the new regime and Sessions and Trump, and they've created a whole bunch of panels and information that they're going on. They're going to review everything, and so we really don't know what's going to happen on a federal level right now. And there's going to be a topic on that later, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I wanted to address it because these things are important for compliance and not to be arrested. So on an individual basis, number one, you have to know your rights, and you have to know how to exercise those rights when you come into or you talk to someone with regards to law enforcement. So as Carlos was saying, what I've been doing and really how I got involved in this industry back in 2007, 2008 was representing people in the state of Florida who were using cannabis for medical uses, but yet obviously it wasn't legal in the state of Florida. And we have an affirmative defense here, like self-defense. So if someone breaks into your home and you pull out a gun and you kill them, is it legal for you to murder somebody? No, absolutely not, but you're justified because that person broke into your home and put you in fear in order to defend yourself, i.e. shoot and kill somebody, thereby making murder in that situation legal. So a medical necessity defense is something that was established in Florida by a woman by the name of Elby Musiki. She has glaucoma. In the early, I want to say 89 to early 90s, she fought her case here in the state of Florida to establish a medical necessity defense. What that required was three things. Number one, you didn't bring about the illness or disease yourself. Number two, there were no reasonable alternatives, meaning no alternative medications, no alternative treatments. And number three, that the harm that you're doing to society is less than the harm that would come to yourself if you didn't break the law. So doing that around the state, we have had a lot of success in representing patients. I still represent many, even though the laws have changed, because people are still getting arrested for this. Under the current medical laws in Florida, we have, and I know a bunch of people raise their hands as patients, but what's happening right now with this system is very difficult. Number one, you can only have those modalities and those things that are currently recommended to you by the doctor. So in the state of Florida, if you're a patient, the doctor says, okay, I'm going to give you a vaporizer, I'm going to give you oil, I'm going to give you capsules. And those are the only products that you're allowed to have on you. So I've had a lot of patients and people call me and talk to me and say, hey, I have a patient card. Does that mean I can have my own marijuana and I can smoke it and I can buy it on the street and I can do whatever I want? I said, no, it does not. And the cops will arrest you for that, and they will, charge you with criminal charges, even though you're a legitimate patient. So that is one of the things I get asked regularly and commonly. I mean, if you test positive for cannabis or something, that doesn't matter in a drug test or something like that. That wouldn't affect it. But if you have the wrong type of medication on you when you're traveling as a patient, it could cause criminal charges. If you have the wrong amounts, if it's not in your containers and it's not properly carried with all your information for your registration, cops around this state really right now have absolutely no clue what's going on. The majority of them, most of the road patrol cops, so everybody's in a registry who's a patient in the state of Florida. They have to put you in and send it off to the state. The law enforcement has a database that they can go in and check at any point in time to determine whether or not you are or are not a legal patient and what you have, what your medication is supposed to be in your modality. So these are types of things that you have to be aware of because, again, this is a very common question that I get from patients is in regards to what can I have for medication. Just because it's legal for medical purposes doesn't give you a free-for-all to have whatever you want. I have had clients who are medical patients busted with flour. And unfortunately right now, our program, we won't talk about that, is obviously very limited. It's very not favorable to the patients. And as Tom was saying, and there's a lot going to be coming up in the next couple weeks, and I'll talk a little bit about that with the Department of Health hearings. If all of you are here, and it seemed like everybody was on, the majority of people were on the entrepreneur level, you have to get involved to help us change these laws and help them understand what we in Florida and 71% of the people voted on, so that we can have these options. So currently right now in our legislature, we have multiple different bills going through. We have 2 bills in the Senate going through. One is very restrictive, meaning the 7 nurseries. There's really no additional grows until we get to 500,000 patients, and then it's limited to a certain amount, and then after we get another 250,000 patients, they open it up more. And we have to fight against that. It's very in line with the Department of Health proposed rules. And does everybody know about the Department of Health hearings next week? Okay. So there are Department of Health hearings throughout the state. There's one in each region of the state, basically. So the first one is in Jacksonville, and then I think it goes to Fort Lauderdale and Tampa, and then Orlando, and then Tallahassee is the last one. Broward's Tuesday, so yeah. So they do start this week. So there's one in each region. Those should be listed on Florida Cannabis Council website. They are on the Florida for Care website. So what we're working on doing, and we encourage people to attend whether or not you want to speak or not, but we're encouraging doctors, patients, entrepreneurs, and business people to get out there and express their opinion and really tell the Department of Health what we meant as people in the state of Florida by voting for 71%. And this is how we are going to prevent people from hopefully getting arrested from this anymore. I'm probably one of the very few attorneys in the state that is actually trying to work myself out of business by legalizing this. So, and I'm glad to do that. I'd much rather be setting you all up for businesses and setting you up for cultivation in your processing facilities and your branding and getting your name out there than having to worry about you being arrested and put in jail for a plant. And so these Department of Health hearings are important. So the Department of Health, they issued proposed rules. There will be the 5 hearings next week where the public gets to comment. You're going to have about 2 to 3 minutes to speak. You should show up early so that you can get on your sign-up sheet and that you can make sure that you can have time allotted to speak. I don't know the format yet as far as whether or not they're just going to allow 2 hours of public speaking or they're going to do some sort of presentation first, but those will be coming out and we should have that information soon. But we need to show a solid effort and a solid voice, and that everybody in this state who is supporting this issue is up here making sure that they know that we want an open market. We don't want our patients to be able to have a choice between vaporizers only. We don't want, as a patient, that if they don't have your medication, and this stuff is happening right now, and I've had this happen with at least a handful of patients, they go there, and this is the issue with getting arrested too, and say they get a vaporizer ordered for them. Well, they go to the dispensary, and the dispensary doesn't have vaporizers. So what do? They give them capsules. Now that just technically created an illegal drug transaction. That was a crime. But yet they're doing it, and then these patients are like, number one, if they don't know and they haven't used cannabis, don't know what they're doing with it, and like, what am I supposed to do with this? And number two, technically, if a cop pulled them over and saw that they were supposed to have a vaporizer and they have capsules, they're getting arrested. So we would be the only really open market state in the country that would provide that. Our doctors have to provide modality, they have to provide dosing, and we believe that that's a potentially unconstitutional and potentially puts prospective doctors in harm's way as a result because it's a little bit too specific. So we're trying to make sure that everybody is protected in this industry. So we have the patients obviously educating you in order to make sure that you understand the rules and laws and what you can do. We have the doctors who are contacting me as well on a regular basis, especially when the amendment passed and the inconsistencies with regards to whether or not they should or should not be recommending under Amendment 2. And that's a totally different story, which I personally believe that it's technically illegal what's going on right now by them recommending under Amendment 2 and putting people in the registry. But we're not going to fight patient access. We're happy that patients are getting medication right now. And then number 3, on your business compliance and your business side, what you have to do to make sure that you don't get arrested. And those things are coming out daily there again. So the rules and regulations for compliance for you all, the people who want to get into the business, whether it be cultivation or dispensaries or distribution or potentially a wellness center, administration facilities, things of that nature. The most important thing that you have to make sure that you're aware of is compliance. Because these rules and regulations are changing even in legal states and medical states on a day-to-day basis, weekly, that they're changing new rules and regulations, new testing procedures, new requirements for packaging. And these are things that you're going to have to stay on top of in order to make sure that your business can strive here in the state of Florida and that you're free from any sort of persecution either from the local or the federal government. So these things are extremely important, and I don't know, there was many people, most of the people at the first cannabis conference you've been to, right? There's a good deal of people here for that. So I think this is very new to most of you as to what's going on and how this process is going to play out. I would suggest that as far as for your own education, you know, you do use Florida Cannabis Coalition. I think we have created one of the best educational seminars and events that cover all aspects of the industry in the state, and that's why I'm very proud to be working with them and joining them and doing these conferences around the state. There were very many with misinformation and bad information for people, and we want to make sure that people understand what's going on, how you can best be involved in this process, and exactly what you need to do to set yourself up to potentially do this. So on the business level, you know, we have limitations as far as what's going to happen. We need people to get out there and to fight for these rights. You know, if you have connections to local or state or county officials, I recommend people to start making contact and educating them and telling them what you want to see in this market. And again, it all goes back to this. We want a free market so that people can do this freely, so that people don't have to face persecution either on the state or federal level. And this goes both, again, for a state and a federal basis. So, you know, we have to work on both levels with this new regime. There's multiple bills that are being introduced on the federal level right now that we have to make sure that get passed, including allowing access to veterans, including, you know, a descheduling bill, and there's going to be others. One of the biggest ones that I encourage everyone when time comes to reach out and support is the Rohrabacher Amendment. So the Rohrabacher Amendment is what gives all of you the greatest protection and freedom potentially from arrest and persecution for being in the cannabis industry in a medical state. So the Rohrabacher Amendment is an amendment introduced by Dana Rohrabacher to the budget bill. What that is, and it's good until April 29th of this year, it's an amendment to the budget bill which allows or basically defunds the Department of Justice. So it says, Department of Justice, you cannot interfere, you cannot use federal funds by enforcing federal laws in medical states. So that right now, regardless of what happens with Sessions, I think is the best protection for us in a medical state. That expires technically because it's a budget bill. It has to be renewed every year. Okay, it comes up for expiration on April 29th of this year. We do believe that it's going to be introduced again. We do believe that it's going to pass again. But that's really your greatest protection from the federal government in this industry. And what that requires is to make sure that you're in strict compliance. So we'll talk about compliance numerous times because that's going to be, I think, a theme of the day with Tony speaking and the other panels that we're doing, is that compliance is one of the most important things in this industry if you want to avoid fines and you want to be successful and keep your shops open. So it's very important that you understand all these things. It's very important that you be active so that we can get a system in Florida so that we can all flourish in this business. You know, the financial impact statement of Amendment 2 recommended about 1,900 dispensaries in the state of Florida, and I think we have enough for everybody in that room. So we have to continue to fight to get that, though, and by being here, I think you're taking the step in the right direction to do that, but if you really want to get into this industry, you have to continue to follow up and take those next steps. So compliance, education, and making sure that everything that you're doing is, to the T, and I do suggest getting together with consulting groups and attorneys and things like that to make sure as you're setting up your plan that you know every step of the way what's going on with compliance. Most of us are working in Tallahassee, working with the Department of Health to sort of understand what those rules and regulations are so that we can adequately educate you on them and that we can make sure that if you're getting into this business that you know how to be in compliance throughout. There's problems in Colorado now. I have a buddy with a dispensary out there, and they keep on getting $15,000 fines because someone is cutting their chain on their dumpster. You know, and he's like, what can we do about this? We can't prevent it. It's someone who comes up every night, and he's gotten multiple fines for that, and they ended up selling their dispensary out because they're kind of annoyed and they have a lot of other things going on. But, you know, these things are very important, and these things are going to be something that you're going to have to know. And every city and county right now is going to have different rules and regulations for compliance. So you have to pick out your local level, you have to get educated in your local level as to where you're going to be, and you have to make sure that you're in compliance so that you can avoid the ultimate destruction of your business and everything that you do and not getting arrested. So do you guys have any questions about anything we kind of discussed? It was very... Well, first, it's a recommendation. Okay, we got to use the word recommendation. We can't prescribe as doctors because it could potentially violate federal law. But you know, it would be the same or similar as to almost any other substance. So if you gave somebody an opiate and they took it and you gave them directions, and that's why you're supposed to inform them and educate the patient on it. So I don't believe that there would be any liability there. Yeah. Sir?
Sure. What's the best strategy for somebody like me or somebody else in here to, you know, approach one of these Department of Health hearings? Are there any maybe outlines of their, you know, an essay or something that I can just go in and fill the blanks, put my name on or something?
Well,
like
no, and everybody has about 2 to 3 minutes to speak. So if you do want to be a speaker at one of those hearings, Florida for Care, and we've been working on for a while now talking points. So basically what we had done is basically pick out all the problems that we believe are with the amendment or unconstitutional and violate the amendment. And so we have talking points for those. So you can either look at the Florida for Care website. It should be on, information should be on the Regulate Florida website. It's up on the Florida Cannabis Coalition website. And you know, there'll be sort of leaders at most of these, at I believe every area in the state, including here in Fort Lauderdale, that'll make sure that if people want to speak and they want to do specific talking points, we can get you that information. So, because we do believe it's important, and we want to create a unified voice around the state so that they know that everybody in the state agrees that we don't want the Board of Medicine to decide what a debilitating medical condition is. We don't want the doctors to decide what kind of medication that you have. You as a patient should be able to go in there and make your decision and your choice. Yes, hello doctor.
And I'm quite concerned about this situation with me ordering a vape and they get something else. First of all, should I advise my patients not to do that? In which case, I'm restricting treatment. Or should I warn them? And what's my liability if that happens?
You know, from my perspective, under the amendment, there is no liability. The doctors are extremely protected under the amendment. Under the statute, the low THC statute, that liability does fall with the dispensaries. So the dispensaries could get up to a $10,000 fine for giving another modality. You know, and the problem, I think, more or less comes with your inexperienced patients. So your inexperienced patients who don't know the difference between a vaporizer and a capsule, that's an issue. Because they're looking at, like, how do I use this? What am I supposed to take? How much? What is this going to make me feel? So that whole, you know, you're supposed to educate them on the modality and things like that, that you had conversation with them. Now they don't know what's going on because they have a totally different aspect. And I think that's sort of the biggest problem, and it's very difficult to do. And hopefully you have a good enough relationship with your client that they will call you and say, hey, I got this instead, you know, maybe how you take it. Because as far as I'm concerned, if the patient's getting the medication and it's something that can work for them, then they should take it. There has been numerous complaints to the Department of Health about this, and as of yet, they have done nothing.